Hello and welcome to Season of War. I am excited here today to be talking to Carl. Carl, obviously, you've recently attended the Season of War Grand Tournament. It was a
Yep.
far travel, big adventure to get there. Obviously, not our homegrown first ever Season of War GT. Super excited to run that. But Carl, I guess jumping right into things, you obviously brought your KO, or not obviously. Now it's obvious in hindsight, but you brought your KO and had another run with them. But I guess just a quick preamble about the tournament: 65 players, 5 rounds. First tiebreaker was battle points, and then strength of schedule. And I think those are the main things. It's a very brief kind of overview of the event. Was there anything leading into it, Carl, the event in the mission pack or anything that kind of impacted your choices or your build or army selection even, with KO or coming into it?
Yeah, so the season of RGT was 2 weeks from Summer Slaughter, I believe, right?
Yep.
So it was a very quick turnaround, and with list submissions being a week prior to the tournament, uh, I decided to stick with what I knew. Had some very good success at Summer Slaughter, so wanted to kind of keep that going. There was kind of a few things in my list that I wanted to change, but I just said, don't rock the boat. Just keep doing what you're doing,
Pun
and
intended.
just uh, take what I already know. So I kind of just stuck with um, the exact same list from the Summer Slaughter. Now, kind of in the conclusion section, once I don't want to lead us
Yeah.
too far into things, but there are some things now that I would consider changing between the two lists, and that's just not just because I you know had a loss finally with a list or anything like that,
But the
but
more
it's kind of just
the more you get games, you like 5 games, you're getting a feel for an army, but it's not like
yeah. And
it's
I did
the more you
play in
get,
a
yeah.
small RTT in between Summer Slaughter and
Oh yeah,
Season
I
of War
forgot about
GT, so
that.
I had even more practice
Yep.
with the list, which led me to basically be very comfortable with what I'm doing. Kind of when you start an army off, or start playing an army after a long time, it's more about learning your own rules and doing your thing as opposed to trying to counter what your opponent does. And especially with KO, it's all about uh, list knowledge and
Mhm.
what your opponent's main piece is and what runs in their army. And then if you can take that out, you're in a very good position because you don't have like ungodly output.
Yeah, but you're entirely when you have generally with your movement and relocation abilities, you have so many options of what you can target. It's not just what
Hmm.
your opponent presents you.
Yep.
So you have to make the right decisions to do well with KO.
Yeah, and the big sticking point in the army is when do you commit. The 12-inch range guns mean that you're danger close, and most melee armies will catch you when you decide to commit. So you play really far out, but when you do play really far out, you don't cap objectives. So there's kind of this interesting balance. It's not necessarily the most entertaining army to watch, but it's one of the most interesting armies to play, in my opinion, at
Yeah.
least, as someone who loves KO.
Well,
So
that's totally fair. But I just want to say a quick hey to everybody in the chat joining us, or if you're watching this back from far in the future, thank you for spending your time with us. Hey to everybody in the chat again, and appreciate all you guys, especially all our premium members who, again, help make all this content possible. But again, talking about your list, Carl, want to just kind of give us, I know you've done a recap with this list before,
yeah,
but might as well run
just
us
the
through it
highlights.
again. Yeah.
Yeah, so biggest threats in my list, the hammers, are the Argonaut Ironclad, obviously, the Incarnate, as well as the Ten Thunders. The secret sauce in any KO list, and if you are building a KO list in the future, the Admiral, it just gives you so much flexibility in terms of countering because you choose his special ammo after deciding who goes.
Mhm.
It does mean that if your opponent has a monster heavy army and they want to alpha strike you, you can choose the D6 charge um, ammo. But more often than not, people are now starting to rely on ward saves as their main tool to survive output, and so just 2+ removing ward means you just completely remove it. And then if you don't have any good options, you could just make those 10 thunderers -2 rend base, and then with the purple sun, which I've taken, -3 rend, and that just will cut through
Very solid.
most people's armor. And you can get them to twos to hit, and then threes rerolling ones, 22 shots. So quite reliable at 18 inches, and so you can just pick and choose what you pick apart in your opponent's list, as well as the navigator, just there to prevent the flying threats from coming at you too fast. Things like Marathi, Maw Crushers, even Night Haunt, that matchup would be very
Oh,
difficult without a navigator.
that's
Just
a good
half
point.
the 20 blade guys, and they move 4, and they'll never catch you, just as long as you roll a 3 up. But it does mean those 1 or 2 key turns that because you do it in the hero phase, you can see if it goes off, then you can be more aggressive. If it doesn't go off, then you can pull back because of their 8-inch move. So um, had some testing against ghosts, and the navigator is basically there for that specific reason.
Yeah, it's nice that that ability is in the hero phase rather than like a shooting attack or something that like slows them down.
Yeah. So it's just, and it's at 36 inches, so you basically can do it pretty much the whole board. And then obviously the canvas with the spell in the bottle. Now, people have asked me questions as to why I have the arcane tome and whether or not it's wild. I'll just kind of reiterate: the purple sun, if it's deployed by the spell in the bottle, is wild. And not, it's very very dangerous that you do it, but the one turn that you need to get it off, since people have such good magic defense now,
Mhm.
means that you could just deploy it and then just
Automatic.
guarantee that it's gonna go there. Yeah, I didn't even know that during the term. Quickly found out that Thankful is +3 to unbind,
Yes. Yeah.
which is crazy. I thought he used to just be +3 to cast, so he's as good as Nagash at spellcasting, which is
Yeah, it's
insane.
wild.
And +4 if you have if you have the knothole close to
Yep.
him. So just almost guaranteed that he just throws one of those things down.
Yeah.
But yeah, the list is not very many wounds. It's 100 and just north of 100, I believe. And so you have to be very deliberate with
94 actually. Oh, that
94.
doesn't
Sorry,
include the incarnate though.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 94 without the incarnate. So it's a very um thin list in terms of uh the number of wounds, and so if you make a mistake, like I said before, your opponent can catch you and potentially just roll your army, and it very quickly happens when 1 or 2 pieces of your army goes down. Then yeah, it's fairly quick. The only thing I will shout out in this list is the 3 times 10 Argonaut Company for 90 points. um, Kind of the unsung heroes of the list. They are an expert conquerors. The problem with KO is not being able to hold objectives. Combined with the Zilfin auto run 6 means that they just move 10, and you can just
Yep.
basically fit them into objectives quite easily on the 25 mil base. And there is many opportunities for me to do that. People just largely ignore them because they want to go try to damage to Kronspine or damage to Ironclad,
Well,
or the Thunderers.
I think bounty hunters is like best served on units like that are like not targets you actually care about.
Yep.
Because like Arcanauts aren't going to do much, to help, maybe a damage here or there turn,
Yeah,
but they're not doing a
pretty
whole
much.
lot. So they largely get ignored, which is, I think, again, the best units for bounty hunters, because either your opponent's going to ignore them, or if they do go for them for from a scoring perspective, it's leaving your more important stuff alive.
Yeah. And there's just a lot of opportunities where someone doesn't want to dictate or doesn't want to commit their massive hammer into 10 Arcanauts, because why would you? So
Yeah,
they put their secondary hammer or their third hammer into 10 Arcanauts. And they're a 4-up save. So if you all out defense them 3-up, and then you spend a gold to immune to battle shock them, means that usually you have one or two left at the very end of combats, and they're still worth 6 or 3. And then you just say, "Oh, well, I still have the objective." And people get very frustrated at the Arcanauts.
yeah,
And like I said, the auto run 6 is what makes them so good. If you're not running Sylvan, then their value drops a little bit because you don't have that guarantee that they can get on objectives um, quite quickly. Um, but yeah, they won me some games for sure.
nice. Awesome. Well, that's obviously your list. Coming into
Also,
it, yep.
I forgot my Warlord Battalion the whole tournament
Oh,
for the CP.
yeah, yeah. It's one of those little things, right? You're not used to it.
Yeah,
Um, so coming into the tournament, there were a couple of big standouts that we had seen in the armies that were coming, namely, uh, 25 out of 65 players had Purple Suns, and
yeah,
10 out of 65 players were playing Night Haunt. So,
yep.
um, I guess, what did you? Were there any matchups, or what are the matchups you're most scared about
Um,
going into an event?
yeah. Nighthawk's a difficult one because it's just so dicey. Like
Mm,
it could go either way, where they just roll 4-up, and because I don't output so many mortal wounds, it just means that I lose if they're able to roll well. But consequently, if they're not able to roll well, I have a lot of multi-damage weapons, and so it'll just punch right through their wounds, and I can, on a 2-up remove their ward save on that critical turn, so I can guarantee a unit of 20 blade guys,
you can take out
which
the
are
big
kind of,
threat when you, yeah,
yeah, which are the most popular unit right now.
yeah,
Means I can just take them out in wholesale in one go. And then if I can half movement the other 20-man plate guys, which is kind of the most popular list iteration for Night Hunt, means that I can get ahead and then slowly take them out, turn by turn.
so
Um,
it seems like you have some good play against them.
yeah, the mortal wounds when they catch you just means, and the minus is to save, it just means that your army just crumbles when they finally do catch you. Which is partially the reason why the incarnate is there, because you can't retreat from him. And so you just toss him to be that speed bump for the Night Haunt army. Either they'll go into him and then you have multiple turns to output from shooting, or they try to avoid him and then you just use him as an area denial piece. So you put your ironclad semi close to him so that the Night Haunt player has to risk something to get into
Yeah,
your meaty stuff. So that's why he's there. If I didn't have the ironclad, it was just all boats. I think the Night Haunt player just pushes as hard as he can and tries to take as much of the board, and then it's basically a race against time. But with the incarnate, there's a little bit more play from that standpoint. So that's why he's in there. Very good. You know, some people just waste so much output, uh, and not a lot of people, or a lot of people want to guarantee that he goes down, so they'll try to
yeah.
put 18 wounds on him. Because when you roll a 15 after dealing 14 damage, it just feels terrible, and you kick yourself and say, "Why didn't I just
Yeah, put a
put
little
two or
more
three more
effort.
wounds?"
Yeah,
Yeah, so it just wastes a lot. Yeah, so I've had people put like 30 plus damage on him. I'm
and
like,
I mean,
okay, he goes down.
yeah, he's going down, but yeah, you're
Yeah,
it's that fine line. Like when you split attacks, right? You want to put enough in that you're
yeah,
very reliable, but not waste too many resources.
yeah.
Um, but I guess starting off, let's jump into your game one.
Yeah, so game one, I did a Deepkin. I played Olivier Gandui. It was nice seeing him come to this side of the of I was gonna say the pond, but there's no oceans
Yeah.
between us.
So
This
on
side of the
provincial
border.
border, yeah,
Yeah. So he was running a very interesting Nautilar list. The Leviathan, 2 of thralls, and then that 30 blocker reavers, as well as the 2 times one alapexes, which just allow you to be so mobile in your army. Um, the interesting thing in this list is the Soul Scryer. So having played you a lot in AOS 2, I wasn't you kind of deep strike uh eels or some sort of melee threat so that
yeah,
they can get much closer. So I wasn't quite sure what Olivier was doing um in the beginning when we were deploying. And then he ended up deep striking the 30 reavers
yeah,
instead, because you don't get pluses to charge anymore, like you used to.
yep. Keeps them safe, gets them into the right spot.
Yeah, and so that kind of signaled to me that he's gonna give me first, which you don't want to be doubled by KO, that sort of thing. So what's the next big threat in his list after the 30 Reavers? Because obviously I can't reach them turn one. It was the Achillean Leviathan. Uh, but he screened well. He put it so that my Purple Sun couldn't land. Um, Anywhere near the Leviathan. Basically had to throw all screening out, and then the sharks space so that the base size of the Purple Sun couldn't drop. We're playing Presence of Idols, so it did mean that he had to sacrifice the idol point from the Reavers, because it has to be on the
Yeah,
table.
true, true.
So he had to sacrifice quite a bit, and so I was okay in kind of how I was going to approach dealing with this list. Deepkin nowadays has an issue with scoring units, because the things have gone up by so many points. Eels aren't what they used to be. Means that you don't have that many units
It's
to
very
score
elite now.
objectives.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my game plan turn one was to try to eliminate as many of his scoring units as possible. Screen out the 30 reavers because I know they come wholly within 6 and then shoot 18. So if I'm 24 from the edge, or my Arcanauts are blocking the stuff that he can deep strike in, then I would be in a good spot. So that's exactly what I did. Um, Flew high, deployed the Purple Sun, got lucky. One of the sharks got lifted by the
Oh,
Purple Sun,
nice.
and then the rest of my army shot at both the turtle and the other shark. Other shark went down. 10 thralls went down. So after my turn one, my ironclad was fairly central. The Arcanauts were screening my backfield. My Thunders were semi in the front, and the Crown Spine was in a position that if um, Olivier didn't move his turtle in a less than ideal fashion, that the Crown Spine would catch up the following turn. This is what we were saying before, as well as the Navigator. He had half movement the turtle, so
Oh,
if
nice.
he doesn't run the turtle, then I'm gonna catch
It's
him
going 6 inches.
regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and he placed it fairly far back to prevent it from getting Purple Sun. So I was it was in a good spot. Olivier, again, because of where I had placed my Arcanauts, deep struck the 30 Rivers semi in the corner, on one extreme side. So that signaled to me, now that his turtle couldn't move and that his sharks were dead, that the far objective from the Reavers was mine basically the whole entire game. Like there's nothing Olivier could do about that. And so what I thought his game plan was going to be following was to roll into the center and then try to hold two and just try to outscore me that way. Um, and so turn two priority is kind of the most important aspect, or one of the most important aspects of the KO game plan. Obviously, you play to mitigate that as much as possible.
Mhm.
Uh, but if you win it, you can
Can be
then,
polarizing.
yeah, can be away or what have you. I did end up winning it, and this is kind of where the mistake happened for myself. I got too aggressive.
So you
The
took the
crown's
turn.
fine. I did take the turn. You kind of want as KO if the turn order goes I go, you go, I go, you go, I go, you go,
Yeah,
kind of like how 40K is, then you're in the driver's seat. If at any point your opponent double turns you,
that's
it's
when it
very
gets
difficult.
dicey.
Yeah, so the other thing as well is like on a double turn for yourself, like you could be very, very devastating for your opponent as well. Uh, and so yeah, so Olivier's 30 Rivers were in the corner. I know the turtle was gonna get caught by the incarnate, and and what I should have done was flew high my ironclad with the thunderers to the extreme corner. Since I was holding the middle objective at this point, flew high into the corner. Um, just to keep myself safe and then shoot Olivier at 30 inches with the main gun, which the Ironclad is able to do. And since he moves 8 and shoots 18, he's not able to catch me from that range and just either kill his heroes or whittle down the reavers so that at a certain point when their numbers get low enough, that's when I jump in. What I ended up doing was jumping everybody into the boat and then going into the 30 reavers. So this is kind of the time that I chose was the most opportune uh to go in.
Full
And so
aggro.
I went full aggro. I jumped in. The incarnate ended up killing the turtle. So at this point, he had 10 thralls, 30 reavers, and the 3 heroes left. So very, very low, not very mobile in the overall grand scheme of things. I went in, I killed about 12 to 14 of them, which was a decent number, but because of the 5-up ward, and my admiral being dead at that point, because I had been fairly stupid with him, I couldn't remove the ward. And so if I had
Hmm.
kept the admiral and went aggressive at this point, then it would have been about probably another 4 or 5 more, so about 20. So I think at that point I would be comfortable in going aggressive, but because I didn't have him, my output was less than stellar.
Yeah, it
Um,
cuts it down a third, right?
yeah, it cuts it down to third, and so I went in, did my damage, and then passed turn. So at this point, I'm holding all 3 objectives. Olivier's kind of in the corner with 30 reavers. What I didn't um, see or had forgotten after looking at his list was that the Soul Scryer had curse, and he
Oh
was
yeah.
Master High Priest, so he was rerolling his 4
Yep.
plus. And so I was so aggressive that it gave him the opportunity to curse my ironclad. And then the remaining reaver shot into the ironclad. Didn't kill it, had to charge it in combat. And
That many
then,
like attached still.
yeah, and then what basically took it down to the wood. And so my ironclad disappeared, and that means my thunderers had to jump out, and now they're immobile. They're just stuck in um, the extreme objective with I think he rallied 3 or 4 reavers back, so
Yeah,
20
but a
something
near
reavers.
full unit of reavers.
Yeah,
Like
so
it's
um,
not safe.
not safe at all. And at this point, the his thralls had taken the incarnate out, but incarnate also took them out. So it was his heroes and the reavers, and then for me, I didn't have very much left either. Um, Again, if I had played much more safe on that second turn and retreated, or not retreated, but flew my boat to the extreme corner, to the opposite corner than where Olivier was, that means that I would be safe and I can, turn after turn shoot him. But here it is turn 2, and I've already lost my ironclad, so he has 3, 4, 5 to basically, slowly wipe the table. So
Yeah,
that's what he ended up doing. He just slowly creeped up and shot things and took things. Um, but with that being said, I was so far in points turn one, turn two, that if I had kept that lead in turn three, I think I would have taken it. Because I think at the very end of the day, it was 22, 23 to 18. So only a 5 point loss for me. Um, Again, it's that tipping point with the army of when you commit. And I committed a little bit too early. I should have played a longer game. I saw red. I won the prior
Yeah.
roll. I was like, yeah, let's go.
Well,
And then
if you feel like you can seal the game, it's yeah, you're gonna jump on it, right? It's hard not to.
yeah, that's kind of my tendency as a player. But with KO, they have so many battle tactics that are so easy to do that you don't have to.
You could have sat back, denied tactics,
Correct, because
and
at that point, my Arcanaut, my 20, the 10 arc, I had 10 Arcanauts in each objective. He had already eliminated the one on the bottom, on the where his Reavers were, and then on the middle. So all I had left was the Incarnate and the Ironclad with the Thunderers and another 10-man unit of Arcanauts. So if I had retreated him all the way to the corner, he had already done against the odds. If he was gonna do desecrate land, oh, because he was where he was in the corner, he couldn't do desecrate lands. He couldn't do barge. He was just simply too far, so he would just fail his battle tactic. What he ended up doing on the second turn, because he didn't have any options, was the deepkin tactic of choose a unit and it has to not be within 12, I believe, of a ship.
yep,
Yeah, so he had to choose that one, and that's why he had to go into the Ironclad because that was the only thing that was within 12. So it was a massive gamble, and he just killed it to the wound. If I had removed the Ironclad from that space,
there's
then he would
no
fail his battle
options.
tactic there. Yeah, he would still only hold one because if even if he ran his Reavers, he wouldn't get into the central point. So he's only scoring 1 point as opposed to the three that he did there. And if he comes to chase me in the middle, then I can take the Ironclad that's in the corner and go to the other corner
Yeah,
and just because he has so limited amount of units at the end of the game, I can just play that hop back and forth. And barge enemy lines is so easy with KO because you could just pick up and drop as long as you have something
yeah.
in your boat that's an automatic. Then you do desecrate lands right after, and then there's a KO one where it's drop three units out of your boat, and they just have to be in your opponent's deployment zone. So you
So you
just
can
combo all three of
do them in
those,
a
like
row.
do them in a row, and you don't even have to interact with your opponent for any of those. So yeah, mistake on my part in terms of how aggressive I was. Um, but it was a lesson learned because I took that lesson into the following rounds. Um, yeah,
And obviously, Olivier is a very solid player. So not the ideal round one matchup, but
no, no. I do feel much better about KO in AOS. I guess it's 3.1 now.
against Deepkin,
Against
yeah.
Deepkin as opposed to how it was previously, because we've had some crazy battles over the years, Deepkin versus KO, and I always felt like I was running up the hill
Oh yeah, for sure.
um, in those matchups. But I played Yuri in the small RTT in between Summer Slaughter and Season of War, and I took that one out, and I felt like if I didn't make that mistake of just going in, or if I did go in, just measure 9 outside of the hero, um, then I possibly could have taken this game as well.
Yeah. Well, as I said, lesson learned. Uh, took the loss, but he still scored pretty well, so kept you in the hunt for sure.
Yeah, it was interesting too because I walked around and obviously our Season of War team members, like I walked around and like, how did your game go? Oh, I lost. How did your game go? Oh, I lost. And I
Yeah,
was like, we were saying that the first round of Season of War GT was kind of cursed for us, except for Rich, obviously.
yeah.
But yeah, everybody ended up losing their first round matchup, which meant that there was a high possibility that we get to play each other.
Yes, it was also pretty evident that there was no favoritism being shown. As yeah, what 4 to 5 of our team lost round one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It wasn't really the start that we wanted.
Yeah. Finished strong though, but I guess jumping into your round two matchup.
Yeah, round two matchup was against Stormcast Eternals. We were playing in close to the chest, so 6 objectives. It was an interesting list, not one that I've had the pleasure of playing against. It had Big Boy himself, Mr. Corondus,
Nice.
um, a Relictor, uh, Tempestors, which have become wildly popular now that uh, Living Cities Fulminators are kind of um, not as much of a thing. Purple Sun, Horror Gas, and Cogs, and then 3 units of Raptors because of course Thunderbolt Volley
3 units of
is a
Raptors?
thing. No, one unit of 3 Raptors.
Okay. I was like,
Yeah,
what?
no, a single unit of 3. Yeah, you no longer six. You see the unit of 6. So interesting list. Uh, looking at it um prior to it playing, I knew that James P was my opponent. I knew that he wanted to stack negatives, like massive amounts of negatives. So Krondis can stack a -1 to your save. The Purple Sun can stack another -1, and the Tempesters themselves have a -1. And for every hit that they generate, they generate an additional hit. So they're 3 shots a piece, so 12 shots. So you're looking at about 20-ish shots going into something at -3 rend. And that's before their Dragon Breath and their abilities in combat as well. So 20-ish shots -3 rend range is pretty scary for a 10-inch range move, 12-inch range shooting,
Yep.
22 effective range. He was 8 drop, so I was 10, and like the theme of my KO list, I know people are gonna give me first, just because I give them no threats to take out. I
Yeah.
put my Arcanauts 10 inches from objectives, and because of it being 6 from the center and then 10 back means I'm 16. I'm usually 16 inches from the line, and because you have to deploy 9 inches behind that, I'm usually about 25 inches from my opponent. So if you don't have anything that moves that quickly or shoots that far, then you're basically not going to be doing very much on your turn one. And if you can reach that far, you're only killing Arcanauts. So what do I really care at that point? So yeah, he deployed tightly in the corner. Like Krondis was just right in the corner, and then a layer of Tempesters, and then a layer of Vanquishers. Um, and I
Very
knew he wanted to
conservative.
do. Yeah, I knew he wanted to do this because of one endless spell that's in my list, and you
Yeah.
don't want a 600-point model to disappear to that endless spell. Now it's 1 in 6 chance, but like it could just
End the game.
ruin your ruin your game. And Cronus, while he has a +3 to his casting, has no dispelling modifiers. Um, but I can also just Purple Sun. So very conservative in the corner, close to the chest, means that I just basically took as much of the board as I could. Turn one. Now my game plan was trying to shoot the Lord Relictor from range, 24 inches, so that I'm not in threat. Um, because that's the only tool that James had for mobility, the translocation from the Relictor. Once that's gone, he has to foot slog his way across the board, and if he has to do that, then I win that mobility game every single time. And so I tried to shoot the Relictor, and I carled it left with my opponent. And so I was like, oh, well, there's my there's the one game sealing play that I had, but it didn't work out. But I was very conservative with how I went in, so I wasn't giving him very much. And the navigator again went off. He on a 3+. Karandis was half movement, so
Nice.
6-inch move Karandis means that you would have to translocate him to get him anywhere in an attacking position.
9 inch charge.
9-inch charge, yeah. And then at that point, he's by himself, and I collapsed my whole entire army. My Kronspine was semi in the middle of where I had set up my forces. So whichever side he tends to take with Krondis, I would go in with the Kronspire as a denial piece. And so James rolled his translocate and rolled a one, and so nothing got out of his
No high
character this
priest.
turn. No high
Okay.
priest. He had Master of Magic, I believe, instead for the +1 to wound, the Celestial Blades. So no high priest rolled a one. He had heroic recovered him before, so he was still alive, but I believe he was only on one wound. And so again, he was just in the corner. I was deployed fairly, fairly conservatively. Roll off, ended up winning it, and I basically started targeting the things that could score. So the Vanquishers, um, he had dropped his long strikes at this point, so I knew that they were one of the pieces that could project power, and so it took them out. Um, Ended up taking the Relictor now. My half movement didn't work this time, so Krondis was going to be online. So after I saw that that didn't happen, I just kind of bumped myself further backwards. He's still a 12-inch move, so I was right at the edge of 24, I believe, of Krondis, so that he would have to make box cars to get into the Ironclad, and had screened him with the Thunderers anyways, so didn't matter all too much. And basically, the game went like that, where he kept chasing me. Now that the Relictor was gone, again, that was kind of the one piece that he really, really desperately needed to move his
To be
army around.
mobile, yeah.
Once that's gone, on close to the chest, where it's six objectives everywhere, meant that I could just, um, be anywhere and everywhere and output from 24-inch range. So ended up winning this one quite handily. Yeah, the navigator again was the one piece that allowed me to be more aggressive at the outset, and then be conservative later on. I didn't even shoot at Krondis at all. He was
Yeah,
largely ineffective.
that's it. It goes to show like the navigator that ability is huge. Just to like half move a flying unit,
Yep,
like and when
yep,
it's such a big unit like that or Archaon or something, like
yep. And it's
it's
not a spell
it's
or
a good one.
anything, so
Yeah,
there's no ignoring it. It's just a 3-up. There are ways to make it more reliable, um, but you sacrifice some things to in order to do that.
yeah.
3-up's still very good, and the fact that the sequencing goes, you do that, and then you fly high afterwards means that like you can just mitigate if it doesn't go off, or you could be aggressive when it does go off. Yeah, it was an interesting list. Krondis at 600 points. I don't know if he's worth it. Very very cool. He was basically just slaying endless spells from Krondis. But because I had the Kronspire, it meant that he couldn't deploy the Horrorghast or Cogs, so he was just throwing the
Oh
Purple
yeah,
Sun out. Um, so yeah,
nice.
handy win for Gale.
All right, so that's game two of day one. 1-1 now after
1-1. Yeah,
going to your third game.
yeah. There was an interesting sub game happening. Zach and I were 2 points in between each other in battle points, so we were trying to not play each other as much as possible. But there was an opportunity for us, and then somebody I think snuck in between us, who was 1 point in between Zach and I.
Oh,
So we
nice.
ended up not playing in round three. So
Always want to avoid your teammates. That's like
yeah,
the most
team
important
kills
thing.
are the worst.
Oh. Yeah, so one person snuck in between you,
Yep.
and that one person happened to be a Seraphon player.
Yeah, Vincent. Cannot pronounce his last name, so I won't butcher you guys with it. But he was running Coalesce Thunder Lizards, so I was kind of upset at Vincent. I was like, my friend, you should be 2-0 right now. Why are you 1-1? And why do I have to face you in round three? He had the man himself, Lord Croak. Skink Star Priest. It's a very standard list. Engine of the Gods. Is an Astrolith Bearer. He had 3 times 5 knights since Skinks no longer get the
Knights are great for screening, objective grabbing, all that, right?
yeah, fast. The 90 by 52 mils means that or the whatever 60 by whatever when you string them out, they're a longer screen I think than the 10-man unit if they're 25 mils side by side.
Yep.
So very very good, and they still get the -1 damage as opposed to Skinks who no longer get it. And at the very very end of his list was two Bastiladons with solar engines. Um, and they also still get the -1 damage. So I think he
Very
had a
very
purple sun as
solid. Yeah.
well. If you scroll down, I think I remember a purple sun.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, yeah. So purple sun, um, yeah. So with a list like this, there's for KO, it's difficult because you don't have a singular threat to deal with. You have the two Bastildons with solar engines to deal with, which both are in a one-up save to start off, and just extremely tough to crack.
Yeah.
Then you have Lord Croak. So if you even get within 16 inches of him, or the Star Priest, who's an Oracle, like he's just gonna bomb the hell out of whatever's close by. And so you have to play at 16 inches from Croak, and you have to decide when to enter the 24-inch range from the Bastiladons. Since you only have one shot at 30 inches, and then your next shooting quote unquote bracket is 24, means that you have to really just put yourself out there and then try your best to um to weather the storm. It is only -1 rend, and he didn't have the skink priest, um, which is very very good because the skink priest is what gives them +1 to hit in the hero phase,
Yep.
and then you're able to double shoot in the shooting phase since you can't receive and give
Can't
out
do both CP.
command, yeah,
Yeah.
in the same phase. Means the priest at the hero phase is what allows you to be so offensive at threes and threes. So with that, I knew fours and threes were very unreliable, even with 18 shots. And so I just had to pick where I was gonna go. Like I said, most players who have experience playing KO will give you first, fearing that KO double. And so Vincent gave me first. We were playing Nidus Paths, which you know
It's four objectives in the
I
center. Yeah.
wanted I wanted to somehow use the path. Um, as like I've never seen it. I think I've seen it used once, and it wasn't in any of my games. It was just a game that I was watching. So I was trying my best throughout the whole game to somehow use it effectively. But he deployed his Realm Shaper close to the corner, and so that shut off
Have that
that
garrisoned
tree.
all day.
Yeah, he had a garrison to the Star Priest all day. Um, and so he had deployed the Bastiladons basically uh, far from each other, so he covers as much of the board as possible. But that means that if you have both Bastiladons far apart, means I can just pick on one,
Hmm.
as opposed to
I'm gonna take
going
fire of
in
both.
and then having to deal with both at the same time. Um, Purple Sun again, it can't be understated the effect it has. Not even just the ability to kill models or even the -1. It's just how it messes with your opponent's deployment just right at the outset. And especially with KO, where you're able to just come in
Automatic.
and automatic, and you can just deliver at turn one pretty much 10 inches behind their front screen, means that everybody deploys everything far back, and then you win because they're not a threat for more than a turn, or they deploy them forward, and then you just take the chance. You just deploy it, and what does it cost you? Nothing really. It just costs you, you know, your fly high, and at that point, you want to be there anyways. Um, and so Vincent put his engine and Lord Croak fairly far back, and then the two Bastildons screened by the knights forward. And basically, I teleported to one side. I was going to deal with the Bastildon as far away from Croak as possible. Deployed my Purple Sun, and what ended up happening? Yeah, I ended up killing the Bastildon with the Purple Sun.
Oh, with the sun, you didn't even have to shoot it.
Yeah, I didn't even have to shoot
Oh
it.
gosh.
It just disappeared. And so I was like, okay, well now this side of the board is uh completely cleared from the Bastildon, and so I can just stay away from the other one and slowly blink him off like one by one, remove his knight units, and then at that point the Bastildon's not fast enough, and Lord Croak isn't fast enough to deal with all the threats in my army.
So that was a solid start.
It was a solid start. Ended up killing one of the 5-man knight units as well, and so um, sorry, I actually mistake. We were both the same amount of drops and had won the roll off, so I gave it to him. So this is
Okay.
bottom of one.
Okay, so you
So I
got
really
to give it
had
away for once.
correct. I did give it away, and still, had to put his Bastildons in a forward position. Everything still applies. Can't be so far back.
Yeah.
Um, I hoped he had opened up a little bit more so that I can finagle my ship somewhere and then try to kill Croak or the Engine of the Gods. Because I knew that because Thunder Lizards doesn't have the ability to summon. Once you start to whittle down the units, they start to struggle, as opposed to Starborn,
Yeah.
who are able to teleport and to summon things. But the Engine of the Gods can summon 10 Source warriors if they roll high enough.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to take that piece out as soon as I can, but screened it very well. But with that being said, it's very far back. I believe he won the second turn. Prio, um, the Bastildon did Bastildon things, trying to shoot at my incarnate. Croak was largely um, ineffective.
Just too
He would
far.
Comet's Call. Yeah, he would Comet's Call, hit my heroes, but I kept spending my heroic actions to heroic recovery, and so it was just mitigating the damage as much as possible from
And you have
that
the
standpoint.
don't you have a wound pass off now for your heroes?
Yeah, for the admiral only.
Okay.
So that he wasn't even targeting the admiral. He was just targeting an Argonaut unit. He was rolling 3d6. He was rolling 3 units. He would target one Argonaut unit, and then he would target the other two heroes that didn't have the pass offs. Now, nothing really in his army flies except for Crow, so I wasn't really too bothered by the navigator going down early. He's already done his work round one and round two. And so I
Yeah.
was just heroic recovering my chemist because he was also my general, and losing that CP is quite big. Um, and so kind of went back and forth like that, where I was holding in an L shape my home objectives, which had 10 Arcanauts, the top left, which had at this point, I think 2 or 3 Argonauts, and then the bottom right, from my perspective, which had basically my whole entire army. Um, there. Uh, my turn. I didn't want to get too aggressive because of the lessons learned from round one. I
Mhm.
didn't want to jump into Croak and then try to kill him. It served no purpose
Until
if
you
Croak
can.
was alive. Yeah, if Croak was alive or dead, there's really no point in doing that. I would just kill basically the screens. At this point, he's committed his engine, so went to go kill the engine, didn't kill it. I think it was like 1 or 2 wounds left. So
Oh,
very
so
very sad. This Stegodon is staring at my Ironclad and my Thunders. The Stegodon has shifted over to the top left objective, staring at 2 Arcanauts, and I had my Incarnate there. So kind of state of the game going into round three. If I win the roll off, I killed the engine. My incarnate goes into the Bastildon, kills it, and he basically has Croak left, and I seal the game there. Didn't end up winning. Vincent here wins the turn three roll off. Engine goes into my Ironclad. Bastildon clears the rest of the Arcanauts. But the big story of turn three was Vincent summoned his own Purple Sun and ended up killing my Ironclad.
ooh.
So now I don't have one of my pieces. All my foot troops are like marooned in the corner. His Engine of the Gods ended up dying. But my troops are now marooned in the corner. The Quran spine's kind of in the top left on level one, staring at a Bastildon. Yeah, it's going to be a tough ask for him to kill the Bastildon in a turn with a one-up save. And so I've basically largely immobile pieces, but so does he. And because I've been scoring well, I basically threw the Incarnate into the Bastildon on my turn. Danced around the bottom right, didn't do very much. Like I predicted, the Incarnate didn't kill the Bastildon, but this does mean that he can't shoot anymore outside of the Incarnate. I was also worried because at this point my Incarnate was level one, and so if I can't kill the Bastiladon in the next round of combat, then the Incarnate's going to be gone. Um, and it does mean that he has the ability to perhaps with Croak and that sort of thing take objectives. He had started running his Saurus Guard and his small heroes, uh, trying to get at me in the objectives. So it came down to a few dice rolls at the very end. I believe the bottom right objective I had two thunders left, and he had to kill them with the Astrolith Bearer. He killed one and left the other one with one wound, and he failed his battle tactic, which I think sealed the game. He also shot the Incarnate and did 13 wounds to it, and I rolled a 15, which meant it survived. I didn't kill it in that go right there. It would have been, I think, game breaking if he had killed the Incarnate, um, because my Incarnate became the final piece for me to do Barge. Uh, Along with the one thunder that lived, he who lived, um and so the score I think was not telling of how close the game was. um Seraphon's just a tough matchup for
Always
KO
for everyone.
for everyone. Yeah. The minus one damage just means that like your ironclad's largely cut in half. So if you are playing KO into Thunder Lizards, you try to shoot the single shot into them, because damage six becomes damage five isn't as big a deal as
Yeah.
six shots that become one damage. But the thing with that is it's threes and twos. So if you all attack is twos and twos, and we know based on Marathi and Teclis's track record with twos and twos, more often than not, it just fails.
Yep.
Um, and so I mean, they have a big advantage in that regard. So I was able to pull it out with a few key dice rolls. The Incarnate again was MVP. Vincent threw so much heat at it, and the one turn that he did 13 wounds and I rolled a 14. Like,
It's
what can you
backbreaking.
do?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he ended up on the following turn trying to output even more to try to take it down. And he did take it down a level, but again, he did like 20 something wounds to it.
But you're just so
Um,
behind that one turn where you dump a
yep,
bunch in and don't get
yep,
any payoff. Like
yep.
that's just
Yeah, it's just
crippling.
backbreaking. And he went with Bastildon, double shooting. Um, he buffed it. He Hand of Glory, Mystic Shield it. Like he threw like three or four spells at it to make it like this souped up beast. Spent CP, and then the other thing that was very very impactful in our game, and something that I don't feel too badly about is he wasn't rolling well for his CP generation with Croak. I think Croak generated one or two CP over the course of the game, and so there was instances where Vincent had to think about um,
Not getting everything he wants.
battle shock immunity or plus one save, um, and so I was like, "Welcome to the real world. We
Yeah.
all have an economy."
Yeah.
You don't apparently. So
No one feels
so
bad
yeah.
for Seraphon players
No,
losing the
I didn't feel
CCP.
bad at all. But kind of this was the game where I was like, the Purple Sun's gonna ruin this for me finally. Like it's caught up to me. All the games I've played so far, both in Summer Slaughter, the RTT, and up to this point, the Purple Sun has been on my side. But now the Purple Sun was not on my side, with the Ironclad disappearing to it. Now, if that variance wasn't there, the Bastiladon was there, and the Ironclad was there, I think I think it would still be the same outcome because 200 something points versus 490s, a good trade off any
Yeah.
moment of the day. Um, but that game was out of Vincent's hands before the Ironclad went down. If the Purple Sun wasn't there, it just gives you the opportunity to. It's it's like a comeback mechanic. It's just
Oh,
there
huge.
to just allow you these like long charge plays that happen, and you're like, oh, 1 in 6 isn't really that reliable, but
But if you're, it's, and we talked about it in your last recap video of like, sometimes, yeah, it'll exactly that bring you right back into a game that you're,
yeah,
not doing like on the back foot in or whatnot.
yeah, yeah, and like you still have to play well at the very end because it just brings you to that level. You still have to close out the game,
Yep.
kind of like chess, where you have your end game, and there's people who play end games very well. You still have to do that. Like it won't off the back of it just somehow just
Yeah.
go from 0 to 100 and then you just win because the purple sun has gone off. Of course it could, but it allows players to come back. So I should have made no. There was absolutely no way for me to put my ironclad in a position where I couldn't beat purple sun because with Seraphon they get +6 to their casting um, area. So 16 or sorry
Hard.
14 for the purple sun, yeah, +8 move, +3. It
Yeah.
means that
Very tough
just
to avoid.
25 inches away can affect you. So um, the only way probably is if you prevent it from landing um, within 3. But I don't have enough units
No, that
to
is
to screen
not
like
many
that
armies.
massive base of the ironclad. Yeah,
Yeah, can afford to do that throughout the game, not be
yeah,
elsewhere.
yeah. So yeah, it was a very close, tightly contested game. I liked how Vincent was very muted, like in how he played. He was just very calm the whole time, and just the die rolls didn't bother him. My die rolls didn't bother him. But when that purple sun went off, he like ran around the room. I was like, this guy who was like didn't. I had to like lean over and like do this the whole time to hear him. He just like was running around the room when the purple sun went off. So I mean, he's probably gonna remember that moment for quite some time. So,
Nice. Well, ended day one. Against Seraphon 2-1 now.
yep,
Um,
felt
Probably,
good.
yeah. Had a guess at what you were playing based on the standings. It was pretty straightforward to
Yeah.
figure it out.
Mine was a slightly more complicated because of there being people who were tied in points with me. So either I was gonna get paired up and play Matt Kowalik, good friend of the show, who was playing Skaven, or I get paired down and I play Skaven. I play
Okay.
Mike Story and a Skaven. So, but two very different lists. I like how Skaven has the ability to diversify now. Matt was playing heavy Pestilence with a whole whackload of Plague Monks and Plague Sensor Bears and stuff. And then the other guy was Mike Story, who was playing with 80 Clan Rats, a Vermin Lord Thankful, and a smattering of pestilence stuff like the Plague Sensor Bears and that sort of thing. So two different things, different styles. Mike had more endless spells. He had both Ravanax and
Quicksilver swords.
Quicksilver swords. Matt had the Thankful skateboard, Laocoon the Soul Seeker. So his Thankful was much more mobile. They're both outfitted differently as well. This Thankful is a little bit more punchy, with two Warfire braziers. Matt's had four Warfire projectors, so a uh,
Probably the more
much
common
more
one.
much more common one. Yeah, uh, I mean, because of how many um, units or how many armies nowadays take tens and 20s of something elite, like the four wildfire projectors just eliminate it, just like ghosts. Like
Yeah.
the ghosts just disappear with warfire projectors, and that's why we see it more common. The melee output's very good, but I don't know if it replaced the mortal wound output of four
I,
projectors.
I would
So
agree.
we're playing. Um, forget the mission name. Won't Back Down. Is that what it's called?
Yep,
Where
won't
it's
back down.
lengthwise.
Yep,
Now, this is the first time I played this. This was the first tournament who had it. I think people have settled into a groove,
almost
and
too
I've
much, I
never seen.
think.
Yeah, way too
And
much.
there's
There's
like
only like
six.
five. Yeah, five or six.
There's six, but I think there's probably like 8 to 9 that are like
Yeah,
very playable for a tournament.
yeah. Like I've never played Realmstone Cash at a tournament. This is the first time I'm playing Won't Back Down. Um, I mean, there's others, Turf War and Mighty and the Cunning. I don't think we'll see very much, but um, yeah, there's some interesting battle plans out there that haven't been in tournaments, and which is why you're settling into kind of this rhythm. But Won't Back Down. This was my very first time. It kind of played like two lanes, two in your deployment zone, two in the middle, and then two in your opponent's side, and it was just kind of like two
Yeah.
two runways that you go in. Um, so very very interesting. I had choice again, and I don't really know what to do myself when I have choice. Do I take first myself and try to punch my opponent and you know and play the game plan like I know, or do I go the traditional KO way of giving away first and trying to kill my opponent on a double? So the answer for this particular matchup was me taking first because I think Mike had a big deployment mistake, which I could capitalize on. He put his 80 clan rats in a line just from one side of the board to the other, um, and because of
Not
him
like
deploying
base to base or with gaps.
with gaps, but like they were basically two ranked. Um,
Okay.
So there was like a maybe a 1 inch gap in between the two
Yep.
40-man units. And because of him deploying that piece relatively early, meant that I could deploy the incarnate as a counter to that thing. So my plan was taking first, and because we're 18 apart, the incarnate moves 12. I have a 6 inch charge, and if I
Yeah.
can get in that gap between the two units, it means that they can't retreat. So his whole army's behind that, and nothing flies. So if I can lock those clan rat units down, he would have to just pile in 3 inches, 3 inches, enough to be able to get around his own screens. And so that's exactly what I did. I rammed the incarnate right into the center of his line, and now this is the part where I think I made a little bit of an error. I should have split my attacks so that I didn't kill a lot of the clan rats. I ended up putting my output all in the side that my ironclad had teleported to, um,
Freeing up
thinking that
that
I had,
side of his army more in the end.
yeah, like thinking that I was going to clear that whole end and then lock up the top end. Um, because that's where Thankful was, that's where the Vermin Lord was. So ended up doing too much damage, which meant that he pulled out his casualties outside of three of it incarnate, which meant that they were unlocked. Now, this battle plan was specifically tough. Like, I wouldn't have minded that in any other battle plan, because I ended up killing, I think, 38 clan rats out of the 40-man unit. So there's two left. Um, and the two that he left on were the ones that were on the objective. So this battle plan is 5 up rally for everybody, but if you're a GV, it's a 4 up rally.
Wholly within 6 of the objectives.
Wholly within 6 of an objective. Yeah, so he pulled it out so that the two remaining were wholly within 6 of an objective. So now that my output got cut in half, basically, he would
Yeah.
on any normal battle plan return about 5 or 6. He ended up returning 20. So his clan unit grew to like
Yeah.
22, 23. And so I had a huge rat problem. And then they bring back D3 at the end of the battle shop phase. So they're bringing back even more. So I only ended up really killing like 15 clan rats on my turn. but the big thing is my incarnate was central, locking his 40-man unit with Thankful and the Workbringer there.
Yeah.
Now he had to pass the incarnate to get to have access to the rest of the board. So Mike didn't really know what to do. Does he go close to the incarnate, which allows me to potentially pile in and attack a monster, or does he just stay there and waste a turn? So Mike ended up just staying there and then trying to cast endless spells to do damage to our targets. Ravanax is very, very good against KO. We move 4 inches.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah. The other thing was, I think my Gambit turn one kind of threw Mike off a little bit. He's not played KO very much, I think, at all. So the fact that it was a new army plus my Gambit kind of mixed together meant that he was throwing off his usual mojo. Um, and yeah, basically the game went back and forth. He actually hadn't piled in his clan rats 3 inches closer to the objective on the first turn. If he had done that, he would have already taken the objective, the middle top objective from me. But because he was thrown off, he kept them stationary, and he kept them stationary on his turn too. Um, I was eating clan rats. The clan rats were coming into to me, and the unit that had ballooned back to closer to original size basically was all up in my business, and had to deal with them. And because I would output, and then they would be left with one or two, he would just basically rally them back. So it was a very difficult game plan, battle plan for me.
It's interesting
Um,
because I haven't heard. This is the first game where I've heard that the mission, like the rally, was actually impactful.
yeah,
Like,
it was crazy. The 40-man planner unit, I think
yeah,
I took me 3 turns to deal with them. I think they ballooned all the way back to like 50, and then or like I probably killed 50 or 60 clan rats in total to kill that whole unit, maybe even more. I think finally I kind of caught um the rhythm of it. He would charge them, they would try to kill my Arcanauts, they would die, then he would retreat, and then he would rally them on my turn, and then he would charge
yeah,
them again. Like, kind of just, like, back over and over and over.
yeah.
So, I had just started piling in my Incarnate closer and closer and closer, and finally got to a spot in turn 3 where, they couldn't retreat, and that's when I was able to finish them off,
Finally, yeah.
basically. Finally finish them off. Um Yeah, it was about turn 3 or so. I think Mike was so thrown off by an incarnate that he decided to just jump on it at this point. It was level 1, so he's like, "Okay, this is my opportunity to just jump onto the incarnate and
Try
finally
and
take it
take it
out,
out.
and then I can be free and rid of this stupid thing that's been giving me so many problems." Um, at this point as well, I've killed so many clan rats that he just removed them away from combat of the incarnate, and they've been unlocked and started running down the side
Jumping on
towards.
objectives and
Yeah, so we basically flipped from it being a lengthwise thing where we had two home objectives, two middle, and two your opponents. All the way we flipped all the way to just basically my table edge where I had three objectives, and his table edge where he had three objectives. So we just kind of rotated all the way around.
yeah.
And then Mike had jumped his Warbringer and Thankful into the Incarnate, and I ended up killing the Warbringer
Oh,
in that combat. So I leveled up and then de-leveled, so I was still at level 1. So I still had the Incarnate in play.
oh,
And
that's
on
the
my
risk.
turn, yeah, on my turn in turn 3, I was like, okay, this is the time. This whole time I haven't deployed Purple Sun. So this turn 3 now, I haven't used spell in the bottle. I'm like, I'm gonna just throw it into Thankful. He's gonna get -1. And I'm gonna output everything, and Thankful should die with a no ward from the Admiral, who was still alive in the boat at this point. I ended up not rolling a 2+. I rolled a 1, so it's a 2+ to remove the ward save. So this is the very first time that this has happened to me out of 15 games where I rolled a 1. So Thankful still had ward saves, and didn't end up killing him. And so Thankful was still alive. He's just kicking around in the middle somewhere. Um, the following turn, turn 4, Mike finally dealt with the Incarnate with some Plague Monks. And my turn 4 ended up killing Thankful. For some reason, like it took my whole entire army to kill a 5 wound Thankful. Ironclad, Ten Thunders, Admiral, Chemist, like everybody had to jump in to kill it, which was crazy. But it meant that we're semi stuck in this 3 by 3. And because I took the first turn and took more objectives from Mike and locked him in, meant that I was up by 1. I scored the more point, and so he had to come into me, exposing himself. Um, and I just jumped my ironclad and took another point for another score more. Um, it was a very close game. I think I won by 2 points, which is the score more from round 1, and the score more in round 5.
It's
And that was the difference between us.
really close
Um,
games. This GHB I'm finding.
yeah, which is on a side note, like a great it's a great way to have battle points as your tiebreaker now
Yep.
because of how close games are. It's kind of a little aside there, but yes. Oh, there's so many people. There's Cass.
Sorry. Um. So sorry about that, but
Yeah,
so you not snuffed it out, but got the narrow win.
yeah.
Yeah.
So going first was the correct play there. I think if I had let Mike go first, it would just crowd the middle objectives, score more, and then we would be in the opposite situation where I would have to scrounge points in round 5, and then somehow, you know, probably lose a close 1 point or have a draw at that point. So yeah, 3-1
Good.
after round 4.
Doing this, what you always hope for
Submarine.
is, well, it's you always hope to win every game, right? But
Yeah, yeah.
clawing your way back after a tough start. Now going into round 5, there was a bit of shuffle.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about just in terms of maybe what you were thinking in terms of
Sure.
matchups?
So in terms of matchups, I was supposed to play Michael Sabetti, but unfortunately something happened and Mike had to drop right when pairings were announced. And he was playing a Thunder Lizard Seraphon list, very similar to Vincent's in round 3. But instead of the second Bastildon, he had 30 skinks, which is a lot more difficult for me to deal with. And then instead of Croak, he had a Slan, who's much less points, so you're able to fit in a Skink Priest as support to give the +1 to hit to the Bastildon.
But
And
yeah,
in round
it's huge.
5, we're playing Prize of Gallet or Gallet. So there's really nowhere to run. I kind of got lucky, didn't mention it in round 3, that we were corner deployment so that I could deploy so far back that his Bastillons couldn't touch me.
Yeah,
But in Prize, there's no option to do that.
nowhere to hide.
So yeah, and he was also lower drops than me, so he could potentially give me first, and then on a double, just basically shoot his Bastillon 4 times at a threat. Um, that's probably an incarnate dead. Um, and
Just just
so
just three, right? They can't both double tap.
no, he only had 1 Bastillon, but
Oh,
he
on a
would
double. Sorry.
on a double
Oh,
he would
sorry. Yeah, yeah.
double tap and double tap again. Yeah, so like because he's gonna give me first turn, for sure. So I was very very worried, and I know Sabetti is a very good player as well. He's fairly new to AOS, but he's a guy who who's gotten his mind wrapped around um, the game quite quickly, and quickly becoming a threat. Play some practice games with him, and he's getting better every single time. So, and he's played my KO a few times, so there's no element of surprise from my standpoint. Where I could just pull some weird shenanigans, or there's something that you don't quite understand in KO. Now I try to fully explain my rules to everybody,
But it's not the
but
same as having experience.
exactly trying to absorb 10 minutes worth of information as I'm talking to you in a very loud room
As you're
means that you,
deploying, like,
as you're deploying, means that you probably won't retain all the information. So with a shuffle, um, it kind of took a little bit of time to figure that out from like a TO's perspective.
yep, can't
Um,
confirm.
yeah, so I was able to. I was the table that had to shift, so I knew exactly who was playing. I was playing Joshua Pound with his Beasts of Chaos. Now, Josh and I have known each other for quite some time, played each other, a handful of times in tournaments. Um, he famously piloted Beasts of Chaos with a whole. Oh, there's Savetti.
Look
Just
who
donating
it
$10.
is! The man of the
uh,
hour. Thanks,
I'm
Mike.
busy for the next 6 months, Mike. I can't play any games with your Thunder Lizards list.
Sounds fit.
Uh,
Just grudge him at all the tournaments.
and so I was familiar, and most famously, he played Beasts of Chaos with 18 Enlightened
Yep.
back in the day. So I was expecting it to be the same, and was surprised that it wasn't. It's actually 18 Bulgors, and with the extra rend from the new White Dwarf, or not new anymore, but semi-new White Dwarf, they are Rend 2, and after round 3, Rend 3. So quite scary. But they're 7-inch move, and they don't fly, and they don't have any other shenanigans. They can deep strike from the corners, um, but means that I can control when they engage, and then he would have to play this kind of netting game plan where he puts them in kind of a triangle and closes that triangle, while leaving stuff in the back so that I can't fly high backwards. And so during deployment, he actually deep struck 2 times 6 Bulgors. So I was like, is he deep striking them because he wants to bring them in and charge me turn 1, or is he just trying to protect them from my output? Um, the other thing is that I actually haven't played Beast of Chaos, or the new one at least. I
Oh,
know the
really?
reputation. I know
Yeah.
their ability to um I know their ability to summon means that they can screen a massive amount of the board from me.
And
And so
get
I have
high
to,
rend.
at higher end, so I have to take as much of the board as possible, and then it's probably going to shrink as the game goes on. And so surprisingly, he ended up taking turn 1, and so I was kind of thrown off by it. To be honest, I thought he was going to give me first, and I was just going to plink him from range because I don't want him to get into my stuff. So he deep struck both units of Bulgors, both on the extreme, and he just took maybe 70% of the board from me, and I had this like little tiny castle. He summoned the wild. Now this is I would never recommend doing this, and now in hindsight, I probably wouldn't do this again. But Josh Pound summoned the Wildfire Taurus, which is casting value 7, and he hit my incarnate, and I think he was daring me to do it. So I tried to eat the Wildfire Taurus,
Oh, Carl.
and I failed. So my incarnate, before my turn 1, dropped to level 1. So I'm kind of in the back foot now. Now he
What's
has a
what's the
lot of
casting value on it?
7.
Yes. Odds are you don't get it.
No, 6. It's +2
Oh,
because you add your level to it.
oh, is it? Okay, I didn't realize.
Yeah. So I needed a 6, which is 72% chance to do it. Yeah.
Okay,
So
not so bad of odds.
No, 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 no. I wouldn't have tried to if it was an 8 or something. So yeah, it D-leveled, and I was like, uh-oh. I should just play conservative. And on my turn, deployed the Purple Sun, killed 6 Bulgors. Now he had a Demon Prince of Corn, which is very, very good. Half your charge. I got excited because he also deployed the Doom Blast Horn, like in front of his lines.
Another on the spell.
Another endless spell, incorrect. The um the incarnate can run and charge, even if it's not wild, if there's an endless spell that you can charge. But you just have to end within half, or you have to start your charge within 12 of that endless spell. So it's a little known rule from the incarnate. And so I ended up charging his Doom Blast Horn with my incarnate. And I was like, this is it. I'm not gonna roll. The Doom Blast Horn is casting value 6. So
Then you
with a
just roll a
+1
5.
because of
Oh,
level, I need to roll a
roll a
6.
6.
And he's gonna level up. I'm like, no way. On 2 rolls, will I roll 6 or less? I end up rolling a 3. So my incarnate just went kaput, like without any input from my opponent at all.
Yeah.
And because I was panicked that this was happening, I had charged my admiral into his Demon Prince of Corn, um, and they decided to try to kill the Demon Prince of Corn, um, forgetting that the Demon Prince of Corn had fight first. So the Demon Prince of Corn went, and even I got all that defense, so the admiral was on 2 up. So on 6 wounds, it's probably going to be difficult for him to take down
Yeah.
the admiral. But on 4 attacks, Josh had rolled 3 6s, so that's 6 mortal wounds to my admiral. And the admiral, because he's the one who charged, was far away from the units that he would pass off, and so he exploded too.
Oh God.
So on my first turn, the incarnate's dead, my admiral's dead, um, and I'm basically 1,500 points down, um, from the 525 points down. And so I was really in a back foot at this point, and I had to really sit down and think and um,
A little more
trade,
effectively.
yeah, much more effectively. And B, I need to reduce the amount of casualties that was happening. Luckily enough, I ended up winning the double. I ran my Arcanauts closer to the center of the board because the Bulgors were starting to kind of come in a V shape into the middle, with prize being across.
Yeah.
I basically consolidated on my home point, activated it. So we had basically traded sides with his threats in my zone, my threats on his zone. But I had this core of, I think, 20 Arcanauts and a Navigator kind of holding my own point. And because there were 3 each, it's going to be very tough for him to take unless he um, takes all of them out. Um, and so, do normal KO things. I begin to remove some of the stuff in the backfield. I wanted to remove a lot of the heroes in the back so he couldn't sacrifice models to gain summoning points, because I knew that was going to be where I was going to lose in the late game, especially losing 500 points in my army. So I just eliminated as much of that as possible with my Thunderers, and then started to come towards my own objective from the back. But on his turn, he had come into to kind of the castle I built in the middle, started removing models. He was splitting attacks. Some of the Bulgars weren't able to get in, um, and left 2 Arcanauts in one unit and 1 Arcanaut in the other unit. And those guys just count for 9 by themselves. With the hero, I had 11 on my point. So Josh was on the back foot in terms of scoring. I was on the back foot in terms of models. Went back and forth, back and forth. Um, I was trying to kill his monster so he would remove summoning points. I was trying to eliminate as much as possible the scoring units he has. He had, I think, around 3, he ended up summoning 3 Enlightened um, on discs, and was able to make the charge. So at this point in turn 3, we had completely flipped in prize. But because I was taking second pretty much the whole entire go,
You were,
and I had already activated my home point and I had taken his home point, at that point he had to activate the middle ones, and that's just fair game. It's not
yeah.
a huge advantage either way because I've already taken his stronghold. His home point and my home point is already under siege, but I was holding it for multiple turns. Suffice to say, I ended up tabling Josh turn 4, which was a big surprise to me, having been that many points down. I think the biggest thing in this matchup, I think it's a bad matchup for Beasts of Chaos, as you can see. Um,
Yeah, the
Josh
shoot
didn't.
it's a combat army versus a shooting army at the end of the day still.
Yeah, correct. And also um, the fact that the the whole army has -1 rend, and with Purple Sun, it's -2 rend,
Yeah.
and their 5-up saves with no ward means everything's just going through,
Yeah.
and you just cut through models so quickly. And the fact that you can get to their deployment zone and stop the summoning early if they allow you means that you just win the long game as well. Um, I see you, Tom. I see you, Tom.
I was wondering, Tomlin in the
um,
chat, what's up, buddy?
yeah, ended up winning Best Asian in Season War. Tumbling was my direct matchup there. Uh, won an official prize. I didn't. But yeah, ended up tabling Josh turn 5. And at that point, I was already ahead by score, so I ended up ending up with 4-1.
Taking it
Um,
out, nice.
eking it out, yeah. Now, throughout the tournament, I was dropping my grand strat quite often, actually.
Really? So that's one that
Yeah,
you've generally said you have more control over.
yeah, I have more control, but I don't, I
So
don't,
to
I
to
don't know.
just to
Yeah,
confirm, this is the one where you get to spend gold, and as long as you spend gold every battle round,
and end with none.
and end with none. Okay.
Yeah, and end with none is the thing. So it was kind of one of two things that kind of was occurring was either I would beat my opponent really quickly and not have gold, like I don't have any targets to spare because it's one of 3 things: either immune to battle shock, +1 to wound, or reroll your charge. So if you've tabled your opponent, you can't spend your gold unless you try to purple sun your own models, which was I was trying to do on more than one occasion, which is not very reliable. Just so that I can immune to battle shock the Arcanaut unit,
Yeah.
especially the 10-man unit that's in the very back, that's just so far from everybody. Everybody just ignores them, that they're just there.
Gotta find
Um,
some like not
deadly,
yeah,
deadly
deadly
terrain.
terrain. Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually had kept asking my opponents if they were okay to use mystical terrain, and I would roll them, and I would try to. There was no deadly in
Oh yeah.
any of the games that I played it with. I think I played 3 games with the mystic terrain, and there's no deadly at all. So um yeah, it just wasn't in the cards in those things. So it's either that happens where I beat my opponent too quickly, which is not a bad problem to have, or the other problem is it's a very close game, and I have 1 or 2 units left with gold, and my opponent knows that that's my grand strategy, so they in round 5 just try to target them like as much as they can.
Yeah. So what happens if a unit dies before you spend the gold?
That's fine. It's on the table.
Yeah. That's what I
So
figured.
it's okay. So if you have 2, people kept just targeting the things that were left to spend in round 5, especially if I didn't win the roll off, which I don't think I ever won the turn 5 roll off in any of my games. So all my opponents just kept gunning for those units to try to deny the 3 points from me. Like the game with Mike, if he had killed, I think, 10 Arcanauts um with his Claw Lord, then he would have denied me the 3 points, which means I lose by 1. He was very close in doing that. I think he
Hmm.
left two or three Arcanauts,
Oh, because it's you have to
um,
spend it every round and have none
and
left,
have none.
not or have.
Yeah, yeah, and have none. So you have two signifiers that do it, right?
Yeah,
So, um, so yeah,
a
so
little
very
tougher this
difficult.
time.
Yeah, at Summer Slaughter, I got it almost every single time except for the one goof I had. So I'm not quite sure what I would do,
Yeah,
but
and so I know earlier you were saying, all right. So in the end, ended up 4-1.
yep,
What is it? Let me pull up the placings here.
ended up seventh
Yeah.
because Oliver with the exact
Oh,
same
tied
battle
you.
points,
Yeah. Each of
exact same battle points. Um, he he had a slightly I don't want to say tougher, slightly tougher
strength
strength
of
of schedule,
schedule.
which meant he was sixth. Yeah, so I ended up being seventh.
Yeah. Still
Olivier
very
there,
good, obviously. Yep.
yeah,
Olivier, your
Olivier
round one
there
opponent.
who had beaten me was in fifth. And so yeah, ended up 4-1, seventh place. Very happy with that. Like I said in our previous recap video, wasn't even expecting. I was going to be extremely happy with a 4-1 with KO. Obviously overperformed at Summer Slaughter, and even here at Season of War GT with a 4-1
See, I don't know,
wasn't easy
Carl. You
climb.
you might have to set the expectations higher, or the pressure's a little higher now.
I
You're
think
doing
so.
too
I think
well.
so. Yeah. Yeah. Just Kharadron Overlords in this edition are so good, and it's not any of their rules haven't changed. It's just the addition of Purple Sun and
Yep.
the fact that battle tactics are much harder to come by for your opponent, as opposed to it's easier for yourself,
Yep.
because you can deny them so much um, by just being
And
so far away from them.
the caveat that any of us that play with the incarnate is the incarnate plugs a lot of holes in some of the like less strong armies.
Yes, yes. I don't think I would have the same success without the incarnate. As sad as that sounds, because people give me trouble for running it, like Andrew there in the chat.
Yep. But
Um,
it is like it's
it's a tool.
it's a good like not inherently good or bad thing, but it's like I disliked seeing or having a piece that can go in every army and be really strong. On the opposite side, it's amazing seeing armies like Chaos, Slanesh, whoever able to compete and play games because of it, right?
Yep.
It's like I like that aspect of it. Um, so can't
Yeah,
complain too
the
much.
KO just requires a tanky melee um, beast or unit. Now you can, I've seen some lists that exchange the incarnate for 10 Hearthguard Berserkers and a hero. Um, but you have to take a sub faction to do that. You give up so many things in order to just one substitute something that just goes in.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and I think I saw at the War Honest War Gamer stat with 3.1. Now it's still fairly early, I
Very
think,
yeah.
in the GHB, but I think the second highest win rate currently is KO.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So Bone Splitters, I think, is the highest, and then KO is second. Now I think that's one of two things. One is because there's not very many people who play KO,
Yeah.
and the people who play KO have like a distinct love for it as a style. Very difficult to paint because of all the details. So the people who are currently playing them right now are people who've owned them and played them for a long time, like myself, and want to do well with them, or have
Yeah.
experience with them. So I think that's the reason. I don't think it's necessarily an easy army to play. I
No,
know a
definitely
lot of
not.
people. I know a lot of people give me grief for the incarnate purple sun combo.
It's okay. I mean, I play them both too at times. We all,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
we dish it when we're not playing them, and we accept that we have to receive it when we are.
yeah. But again, like my round one matchup with Olivier, I removed so much of his army turn one, turn two, but just that small subtle mistake of going in when you feel like you're in the ascendancy, everything just
And came
crumbling
back and
down
bite you.
so quickly. Yeah, means that you have to really know how much output your opponent does. You know what threats are on the board, and then when to go in, for sure.
Nice. Well, in the end, it was another awesome performance with KO. Um, I know you've been excited to like we were talking about, play an old army you love. It's kind of
Yeah,
revitalized with the new edition
yeah.
and some of the other options that we have. But I guess any other final words, kind of looking in recap or looking back at the tournament, this changes or anything.
Yeah, there's just small like artifacts, bolt artifacts and stuff that I would maybe test here and there. I think I've gotten to a point where I'm extremely happy with the list and how it operates, and it perfectly fits with how I play KO. Um, I was on the Aethercast, I think, a week or two ago, discussing with them, and they were very surprised with kind of how my list is constructed because it's high drops and doesn't play conventionally, but it fits with how I play. So I've tested lower drop KO, and that's even more volatile, I think, than what I currently have right
Yeah.
now. And so plus I don't own that many ships, and so like I'm perfectly happy and settled with how my list is. It's just tweaking those final 0.1 percentage points to make it even more efficient. But I don't even know where I'm gonna get those at this point. So I think this is as good as I can make it in the current state of the game, um,
Nice.
which is very for those of you that know me is very satisfying for me because I jump around armies a lot, and the fact that I've played two two GTs, three RTTs with them means this is one of the longest times I've played an army.
Always go. It's definitely the first love or the main love. You
Yeah,
always go back to for you.
yeah, for sure. With that said, going forward, I don't know. I'm gonna keep continuing with KO in the larger tournaments for sure. Both Nova and um,
LVO.
potentially LVO, Everwinter, and the boys. Probably gonna take my dwarves because I want my best
Who's
chance at winning.
yeah.
Um, some of the smaller tournaments, I might play something fun or something that I've concocted. I'm testing some very off the wall lists currently. Um, more for the variety and my enjoyment than anything. So
Nice.
stay tuned.
Well, yeah. I look forward to seeing these off the wall lists and hopefully can bring some out to events and maybe on the channel for a battle report or two.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, then Carl, if that's everything, then thanks I first for sharing kind of the insights into your games and all that. Always love hearing it and getting the after tournament reports. Um, did you mute yourself?
Oh no, no, no!
Oh no, you're good. Okay, sorry.
I think I just nodded.
Okay. Um, but yeah, that's about it, guys. Thanks again, Carl. Thanks everyone for watching. Hope you enjoyed these insights. Always love doing these and getting the kind of game by game breakdowns. But hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And we'll see you all soon in another battle report. Gotta hit the end button. There we go.